Promo valid June 18 and 19 only.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Will discipline some Border Patrol horseback agents who'd been wrongly accused of whipping immigrants at the border.
The agents were using split reins that are used to control horses, and they are not equipped with whips. However, viral images and false narratives sent Democrats into a frenzy. The same source tells Fox News the horseback agents face imminent punishment, despite the DHS Inspector General previously clearing them of criminal wrongdoing. The source tells Fox CBP will accuse the agents of administrative violations. The president of the Border Patrol Union says President Biden convicted the men before the start of an investigation.
And Fox's Bill Malusian reports the union says it will defend the agents against any disciplinary action. Encounters with illegal immigrants at the southern border up in May for the fourth straight month, more than 239,000 of them. According to numbers from Customs and Border Patrol, more than 100,000 of those were processed for expulsion under the health restrictions known as Title 42, which the Biden administration is seeking to end. Two more protesters who entered the U.S. Capitol building last year have been convicted.
Kevin Seafried and Hunter Seafried's gamble to waive their right to a jury trial didn't pay off. A federal judge convicting the father and son on a felony charge and misdemeanors for their actions on January 6, 2021. Photos show Kevin Seafried parading through the Capitol with a Confederate battle flag after the pair entered through a broken window. The elder Seafried said he didn't know the flag was a symbol of hate and argued he never intended to disrupt a congressional proceeding, but Judge Trevor McFadden didn't buy it. The judge appointed by former President Trump presided over two other trials of Capitol riot defendants. He acquitted one of all charges and partially acquitted the other. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Father and son will be sentenced in September. In Washington, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
The rising cost of living is affecting all of us on Guam. Our administration has expanded a program. We want to pay for your child's daycare up to $675 a month per child. This means more money in your pocket to pay for other expenses like the cost of gas and groceries. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration is investing in Guam's future, and that starts by supporting our working families. We are all in this together, Guam.
This ad is paid for by government funds of the Office of the Governor and the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to Tall Tales with your host, Jose Martinez. This is day 2, Guam under siege. I hope I'm not infiltrating your radios and your social media, Facebook.
Go ahead.
I'm here intentionally to bring you my point of view, to bring you the tall tales from the lower bleachers. I think I wanted to say that Bob is doing so well that he let the second string out on the field, but I don't even know. I think I'm still on the bench, but that's okay. I'm happy to be water boy as well.
You're in the seat. You got the mic. You got the time. Let's roll.
That's right. So let's go to Jemmy Cutney. This is the part of the program where we talk about what is written in the paper as far as editorials from our local media. Of course, the Guam Daily Post decided to sit on a permanent bench so far. They haven't put out a local op-ed, and seems like as long as the governor has put us in a health emergency.
Vacation.
Maybe they're in cahoots. But we do have one from the PDN today, and almost like clockwork, the PDN puts out a news story, and then the next day they convert it into an editorial. It's pretty much it's kind of shameful, because this is a really good subject that they could have expanded on in an editorial. Maybe do a little bit of homework to ask some really tough questions from the board, but I'm not sure. Maybe they're too busy with different kind of subject matters. I don't know. But this one from the PDN today is our view: support agriculture movement, helps Guam's farmers build a sustainable, healthy industry. The Guam Department of Agriculture, at a Tuesday budget hearing with the Guam legislature, reported important information about a significant increase in the number of bona fide local farmers. This is fantastic news as our community focuses on strategies to create a more sustainable, affordable way of life. The COVID-19 pandemic, for all of the problems it has revealed on local, national, and global levels, also has forced us to look beyond conventional solutions, creating an important shift in our collective mindset. Let's stop right here. I thought that was kind of a refreshing sentence there. The COVID-19 pandemic, for all the problems it has revealed on local, national, and global levels, that's kind of a revelation on its own, that it's being acknowledged that it wasn't just the virus that affected us; it showed all the holes that
in
we
our
have
response.
Yeah,
our ability to respond,
and not just to respond, but to recover from something. I don't think we're finished recovering from not the virus itself, but the way that we responded to the virus. But in a way, this story was a positive story. I thought it was, because it got back to what real sustainability is. It's not about perpetuating an income. It's about perpetuating stuff that really sustains us in life.
Well, industry, basically.
Yeah. And what was good about the article is that it talked about an increase in farmers, not just from those who sell at the farmers market or on the roadside stands, but those who provide food for their families. They call it the sustenance. Subsistence farmers. There you go.
Yes.
I always get the two confused, those words. Let me just continue with this op-ed. Thanks to programs and projects like Guam Green Growth, Guam Sustainable Culture, and the more than 700 farmers who are now contributing to our island's fresh food supply, we are proving every day that a greener, more sustainable way of life is possible. And with the forward-thinking leadership of the Department of Agriculture, there is a growing movement for subsistence. There you go. Get the accent on the second syllable, Jose. Subsistence farming cultivated by incentives like grants and the potential for financially viable crops. Because if we can grow money by growing our own food, why not grow as much as possible? And this is where I press the button. You don't have to press it. There is so much talk from government leaders about financial prudence and the need for agencies to streamline their functions to conserve financial resources. Everyone at nearly every level is battling astronomical inflation and historic increases in the price of everyday goods we need for basic survival. From infant formula to diapers to gas, power bills, and even the price of fast food, struggling families are being forced to make difficult choices. It's time we start exploring and implementing greener options for sustaining our way of life. The Department of Agriculture is 83% federally funded, according to the agency's director, Chelsea Munya-Breck. And the department is asking the Guam legislature for $110,386, more than they received from last year's budget. Considering the progress they've made and the hundreds of farmers they are helping as they build this growing movement for a more locally sustainable way of life, their $4 million budget request and the extra $110,000 they are asking for is a benign drop in the bucket. The Department of Agriculture deserves that minimal increase, and so much more. We commend the folks at the department for the work they do, and we urge our local farmers, conservationists, and leaders of Guam's green movement to keep pushing forward. And to our leaders, step up the funding for agriculture and invest more in our local farmers. And that is coming from the PDN, a reiteration of their article from yesterday's newspaper. My wife is beginning to grow things. She's an agriculturist. Got her degree at I'm gonna get it wrong, UPI in the Philippines, and so she knows a lot about agriculture. She's been doing a lot of gardening this week. Been outside, probably not today because of all the rain, but I'm looking forward. We have avocados, we have papaya. She's got potatoes out there. Some other stuff that I can't wait to see what comes up. And we're not doing it we're not doing it to sell or anything like that. But this is an opportunity for people like us, even if you're doing little gardening at home, to put yourself into this program, because there's grants available and there's resources available, including working with the co-op over there at UOG. So
there are a lot of resources available.
Yes, and a lot of people don't take those advantages, and I think they ought to put it out there in the media more. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some people who've lost the habit of being industrious. The land is all the way around them. You know, they're sitting on a piece of land that's fertile, and all it's good for is a house, and they don't realize that they could be growing.
Yeah,
lots of stuff.
There's lots of places in the States where the well-manicured lawn is the prized possession of a lot of homeowners, not realizing that prime property they have in their front yard could be used for growing things, for growing food. In the States, there are, though, a lot of zoning laws about how much gardening you can do or how much agriculture work you can do in your front yards. But here on Guam, I don't think that's an issue.
It's not.
People drive around everywhere. You can see people growing things even from buckets. I've seen pineapples in buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was observing a man who was using the scraps from a restaurant, not the meat scraps, but the vegetable scraps, and he was chopping them into a strip that was between a couple of tins. And he kept chopping it into the ground, and then he started growing vegetables out of it, and it was just exploding in vegetables.
Wow.
Because of all the humus that he was making using these kitchen scraps. And as long as you don't put meat into the ground,
right.
That
protein can turn into,
Oh, right. The cats will come and dig it and all that stuff, right? But if you put in just plant-based cuttings, then it will become rich and will be very, very productive. And there's really not much of excuses. There are some commercial farmers. There's the Hamamoto fruit farm. There's a nurse I know who has a piece of land and she wants to make an orchard. So every season she collects seeds and she plants trees, even though these aren't going to come in for 10 years.
Right.
And by the time those trees start coming in, she'll be able to harvest commercially for the local market.
And what I would like to see here on Guam is that diversity. I know that we have a very specific climate here. Some produce or agriculture, some items need to have change in seasons in order to grow. Like citrus has, for citrus to be a certain kind of quality, it needs that cold snap first, and then the warmth to come in. But we are an island that existed way before shipments of food coming
That's
in.
right, and we don't really need to have the shipments of food from outside for the things that can be grown locally.
Right.
So why are we bringing in yellow lemons? Just use the local lemons.
The Guam
but
lemon,
so
the
many,
local lemon is green.
That's right, and so many lemon plants have been bulldozed under to make houses, and so we need people to start planting these. I know Department of Agriculture has seedlings, and you can get different types of fruiting trees, and also there's a seed exchange. My wife goes to
and also go to seed
online.
exchanges are awesome because people will give things, and also you can talk about your experiences and pass on advice, and secrets. Not secrets, but advice on how to grow things and how to get rid of the bugs.
Yeah. Well,
I also want to give a shout out to, let me see if I can remember this acronym, CNAS, the College of Natural and Applied Science over there.
At UOG.
At UOG. They have a really great co-op extension service over there that caters to agriculture and farmers, and they're constantly doing workshops with seedlings and even different plants to help keep your ground in your area fertilized and growing.
Well, this is kind of where the PDN editorial
could have expanded,
failed, because it didn't look at agriculture as an industry or as industriousness on the part of households.
Right.
And landowners who don't think of themselves as farmers, but could, through extended family or through some sort of an arrangement with somebody, turn idle land into productive uses. And so, why not? Why not? Even places that are covered in tangan. Tangan is a nitrogen fixer.
Yes.
It puts nitrogen into the soil. So crops that need nitrogen can be intercropped with tangan. And especially those that need the poles. You don't need, they can grow up a pole. You can grow them up a tangan pole. You don't even need to take them out of the ground. Beans. You just cut the tops off the tangan and leave the stick sticking out of the ground, and there's your poles.
Right.
It's not hard to do.
Yeah.
And we have lots of land on Guam sitting idle. And so opportunities here, but not pointed out by the PDN.
And get outside. You have to be outside to do all of this. And outside will give you vitamin D.
Well,
It'll help you.
There's some people who are already outside who
Right.
aren't doing anything.
Right. So that's things that could have been done through an op-ed, but it's what's great is I'm getting comments of people who know people who grow things, who are using the ground in their just this very friendly environment to grow things here on Guam, so they can have simple stuff like mangoes every year, avocados. Those things you see them everywhere, even wild. The papayas, right, all over the place. But I've seen, one of the listeners here I'm not going to reveal his name because I don't know if he wants it out there in public yet, is growing a certain kind of bean for himself, his family, and also it's another form of protein in case there's a food supply shortage, which everyone's talking about, in the States, and blaming Russia for, right? And we don't have to rely on what's going on the other side of the world for us to provide meals for ourselves. We can do it ourselves, I know people are talking about also as far as agriculture go, the meat market, having a slaughterhouse here on Guam. But that's a whole different side of agriculture, and I'm not sure how much of the Department of Agriculture is working with getting that here on Guam.
That's been a perennial going back to the
Yeah.
1960s,
But it has to
and
do
it
with the
has to do
FDA,
with,
right?
but it has to do with regulations on the production of meat for sale. If you don't have competent people harvesting meat, then there's a great potential for poisoning.
True.
And so there are heavy federal regulations on the production of meat.
But they're
And-
able to do it on Tinian, and they're working with the federal authorities there also.
Right,
And
but
red
why
tape,
we
right?
can't do that here? Well, that's one of those things that takes local funding.
Kind of like we
to-
talked about yesterday. Somebody wants to put their name to it, and usually that puts friction between some of the laws and regulations that we can pass.
Well, hopefully they can just get on with it. I
Right.
mean, it would be easy. It would be so good to just be able to buy fresh chickens that are produced here on Guam. As prices go up, as the price of food goes up, there's going to be additional incentive, market incentive for people to produce, and people will step up and start producing as prices go up. But as long as you can get cheaper produce flown in, it won't be replaced locally. There have been various hydroponics production.
I remember
facilities
there was one
over
here
the
that was
years.
selling lettuce in
Right.
the stores. I haven't seen it lately though. But
It was predicated on the prices that would be paid by hotels.
Okay.
And then when COVID hit, then there was no market.
Well, I hope that knowledge is still here on Guam, because hydroponics is pretty cool. You don't have to grow in soil, of course. It's in water,
But it is
but you do have to
rather
add
than being
nutrients,
instead of being land intensive, it is capital intensive.
Well, I want to transition into something I was going to save later on the card.
And
This has to do with agriculture and growing things on Guam. There is a new industry that's going to be spouting up here, and that's the marijuana industry.
It's going to be
Yeah.
sprouting?
It has spread. It's here. I know it's here. I'm talking about in legal terms, or in industry terms and regulation terms, but what I want to get into is the systemic racism theme that we've had here on Tall Tales, and the leader of that pack is, of course, Paul Zerzan. If you read today's PDN, there is a letter from Paul Zerzan that he had submitted, but in true to form for PDN, they butchered and cut it up. But I have here a copy in my hands of the real letter, the full version that was intended to be put out in the PDN today. So we'll do that. We have plenty of time. And whatever it is that you have your opinions on, this is Paul Zerzan in his full force systemic racism context, and he starts us out talking about legalizing marijuana is a horrible idea. It's already happened, Paul, but I'm going to read the letter.
Okay, let's hear it.
Anyways, legalizing marijuana is a horrible idea. The single most complicated mechanism in the universe is the human brain. Indeed, the intricate complexities of this marvel stand as credible evidence for a higher power behind its existence. Yet the extreme complexity of the human brain is what makes it particularly sensitive and vulnerable to toxins. The human brain malfunctions under the slightest influence of various drugs, and among these are The sweet poison among these, the sweet poison of marijuana is one of the most dangerous because its impact on individual users affects others in a far bigger way than secondhand tobacco smoke puts non-smokers at risk. Marijuana users experience delusional states such as euphoria, paranoia, etc., similar to that found in mental patients. Marijuana intoxication displaces logic with magical fantasy thinking. Spirituality and judgment become so warped that good and evil can become undifferentiated. The results of these effects impact society in a very negative way. Crime, family dysfunction, poverty, squalor, and homelessness characterize societies where marijuana use is widespread. Compare Jamaica to Costa Rica or Nepal to Singapore to gauge the social decay caused by social acceptance of marijuana use. Compare the streets of San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, British Columbia of today with those of 30 years ago, and you will see similar results of widespread marijuana use. For these reasons, legalization of marijuana use is a formula for social disaster and a decline in living standards that will not be easily undone. It is a really bad idea. Paul Zerzan, Barragata. And that is his take on the state of agriculture here on Guam today. It's going to be another cash crop, whether he likes it or other people like it or not. Myself, I have my opinions on it, but I'm not the subject of today, so I'm not going to state. Yeah, that's the part that was left out was those harrowing, foreboding things that he said about the different places in the world, the different places in the United States and British Columbia, the effects of marijuana, things like that. And I've seen people debating and comparing it to alcohol and all sorts of stuff, but in true to form of systemic racism, his letter is not well received in the sense that, we see his letter, things are omitted out of the letter to make it a little bit more printer friendly, I guess, to people, so they don't see what he's talking about, the reasons why he thinks that it's bad or that it's dangerous for Guam.
It's just an editor doing his or her job.
Yeah, but you know what? You see full-page editorials from those who are like-minded to the news media. And we'll get into the card talking about journalism and versus activism in a few minutes. But let's go to a break, and we'll be right back with Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. It is 4:30 in the afternoon. Don't go away. We have more.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie.
Stop. What's that? Hey, you know, what was it doing here?
Maybe it recognizes that Bob is not here today.
It's calling for him.
What,
So what do we have? We have,
let's do, the card. Nope.
That's not the card?
That's not the card.
Wait a minute. That's long.
Do the bell. Down below. There you go.
Hey, all
Today on the card. And this might not be in any particular order because I just jotted down these notes. But we have CNMI versus Science. The Washington Commanders versus Curiosity. We already did Zerzan versus the local media cartel. We're going to do Slagger versus the media cartel. And that's something that came out of Red State. And then Jane versus Unborn Human Babies. That's Jane and Jayne versus
The
Unborn
Janes.
Babies. The Janes. And let's start with CNMI versus Science, because something came across. Well, this is actually a press release that was put out by the CNMI House of Representatives that Canada News had released on their website. It's not an editorial. It's just a press release, and it has to do with a bill that was passed, Bill 22-87, known as the CNMI Equality Act. And I'll just read it from the beginning. I'm not going to read the whole press release. Some of the most vulnerable members of our community got one step closer in their search for equality and acceptance Monday afternoon when the CNMI House of Representatives unanimously passed two House bills that promote the health, safety, and well-being of LGBTQ plus people in the Marianas. House Bill 22-87, known as the CNMI Equality Act, provides that no person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws or the enjoyment of civil rights, nor be discriminated against on account of sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation. The bill expressly prohibits such discrimination in employment and adds protections for sexual orientation and gender identity in the Commonwealth's existing non-discrimination laws, covering areas that include the civil service, health insurance, housing, and jury service. House Bill 2286 was amended by the committee to incorporate recommendations by the Commonwealth Health Care Corporation. These amendments include requirements for a signed attestation under penalty of law by the individual seeking to change the gender marker on their birth certificate, and for a signature by a parent, legal guardian, or legal representative if the requesting individual is a minor under the age of 18. And then it goes on to talk more about why this bill was important and congratulating themselves, and then, of course, talking about more of some of their committees and boards that pertain to this bill. But the thing that I want to talk more about is that last paragraph that I read about the amendment talking about those who seek to change the gender marker on their birth certificate. And we had a little bit of time yesterday speaking with you, Daryl, about how I looked at that as something kind of harrowing or very concerning, because we're not just dealing with preferences, whether it's in the social media or on a simple registration for a school or something. We're talking about vital records, right?
Right.
And vital records, I think, are important, and I can talk a little bit about it because I know a little bit about how vital records get put together. But in New Hampshire, if I can find this, there is a organization called Cornerstone, and I'm not going to go too much into who they are. It's a nonprofit Christian-based organization, and New Hampshire had gone through something similar and talking about amending vital records, i.e. birth certificates. And they had delivered a testimony to their House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee on a bill or an act called HB 446 in New Hampshire. And this is their testimony, and they released it as a commentary as well. says, please vote on an expedient to legislate on HB 446 relative to initiating amendments and corrections to birth certificates. Upon the introduction of the legislative service request that led to HB 446, Cornerstone Action consulted with civil rights attorneys with Alliance Defending Freedom, since ADF has already examined similar measures in other states with an eye to legal precedents and practice. In light of what we have learned, Cornerstone recommends that you vote in expedient to legislate on HB 446 in order to protect the integrity of vital records. That goal in no way undermines the dignity of any New Hampshire resident. In fact, all of us have a common interest in maintaining accurate, fact-based records as they relate to public health. 1. Society has an important interest in maintaining accurate vital records, especially birth records. As early as 1632, government officials began tracking vital statistics, specifically births, deaths, and marriages. Today, state and local vital records offices record over 11 million vital events annually in the United States. These statistics include the date of birth, the individual's sex, the location of birth, the parents' identities, and the date of death. Why does the government maintain such detailed records of these events? Because this information is necessary to help the government fulfill one of its most basic duties: protecting the health and safety of its citizens. For example, information obtained from vital records is used to help diagnose and solve problems that impact national health, including tracking and diagnosing disparities in mortality rates based on age and sex, identifying factors that account for the significant differences in life expectancies between males and females, measuring and seeking solutions to socioeconomic inequalities in health based on sex and age, and studying infant death rates based on sex, location, birth weight, and other information collected from vital records. And they cite a study from the National Research Council on national statistics and vital statistics. And they also cite an Oklahoma aided assistance versus Thomas case, where it says from 1927, where the opinion was, it is our opinion that the legislature provide for the keeping of vital statistics in the exercise of its police power for the purpose of keeping an accurate record of births and deaths and of the diseases causing death, so that the health authorities may be better enabled to combat diseases. Information from vital records is also necessary for national security. It is used to identify potential disease epidemics, such as the Zika virus, that may disproportionately impact one sex over the other. Expose covert bioterrorist attacks, such as determining whether a sudden increase in certain symptoms in a population is due to a random chance or should be further investigated, and identifying criminals and terrorists, where vital records can be used to uncover fraudulently obtained driver's licenses or passports. These are just a few of the important state and national interests served by the government having accurate vital records for its citizens, including information on sex. Given their importance, vital records should not be altered based upon a person's subjective feelings or experiences. Imagine that a Zika-like virus or chemical pollutant cause higher mortality rates for men. In order for government officials to identify localities that are being impacted and direct their aid accordingly, the government would need accurate vital records to know the sex of individuals in the vicinity who have recently died. A sudden uptick in male deaths in a certain region would provide evidence that the virus or pollutant is present in that area. Allowing individuals to alter their vital records, including birth certificates, based upon subjective feelings or experiences, undermines the government's interest in having accurate vital records. The purpose of vital records is not to affirm a person's inner feelings or beliefs regarding their age, sex, or location of birth. As numerous courts have recognized, the purpose of vital records is to maintain an accurate database of factual information. They go on further to say factual information should not be subject to arbitrary revision. For example, imagine a gentleman in his 70s who undergoes extensive cosmetic surgery. He removes wrinkles and excess skin, dyes his hair, and takes other steps to obtain the appearance of a 40-year-old man. The state would not allow him to retroactively change his date of birth by 30 years in order to conform to how he now looks or feels. And the same would be true of a person who was born in New Mexico but was raised and lived their entire life in Iowa. While that person may personally identify as an Iowan, it does not change the fact that he was born in New Mexico. These individuals could make passionate pleas that their birth certificates should be changed to allow them to fully live as a younger person or as a true Iowan, but that is not the purpose served by vital records. Birth records are not reflections of what we want to be or what we feel we are. They are a recording of factual information at a specific moment in time, the moment of birth. And to conclude here, because it does get kind of long in the end, the same is true of a person's sex. Sex is binary, male or female, fixed and objectively verifiable. One's sex is genetically established at conception, ascertained or via sonogram or genetic testing before birth, and may be verified by objective factors such as chromosomes, gonads, hormones, and genitalia. Just as a person's date of birth or location of birth is unchangeable, so too is a person's sex. While cosmetic surgery may alter some of the outward indications of sex, nothing changes the chromosomes, naturally occurring hormones, or other indica of sex. And because having accurate information regarding a person's sex helps the government fulfill its duty of protecting the health and safety of its citizens, it is imperative that vital records accurately reflect a person's sex, not their gender identity. They went on to argue that maintaining accurate birth records is not discriminatory, and they're not at all saying that people should not be able to identify the way they want to identify personally. And it's more of a focus on records, maintaining data, maintaining facts so that real action can happen because of certain circumstances. We talked about blood types,
That's right.
Somebody who's AB who wants to identify as O positive, go for it. But don't change that on your donor card, because you'll severely hamper and probably harm somebody who thinks that you are O positive, even though you have a different blood type. And this is not to make this issue arbitrary or to say that the person deciding to change their birth certificate is doing something that's, as an aside, I'm sure this affects them greatly, but I think the greater importance on society to keep vital records as factual as possible is probably more important.
One thing that we didn't consider when we were talking yesterday is what happens when a person presents himself or herself, themselves, as at some official checkpoint, whether you're being pulled over for a traffic violation, or you're presenting your passport when you're crossing a national border, or applying for for some kind of government program, or trying to identify yourself as being the rightful person to obtain records or something. And your government-issued identification says you are of one sex, but you are presenting in another, as another. Then you leave up to the beholder to decide whether your documents are in order or not.
Yeah, you could be harming yourself in that sense. Not being able to cross a border or being allowed to enter into something because something doesn't match up. And again, this is not to discriminate against people. We're talking about a way to identify not just that individual, but for safety's sake. Like if I guess I guess this really concerned me because number one, the bill that got passed is passed during what is considered Pride Month, right, here in the world. And there is an exuberance to try to do as much as possible to show your wokeness. I'm not saying that's their intention here, but it just seems like anything gets passed of this kind of context in this time frame, you have to question what is the motivation, right? Did they think about this, or did they want to get this passed right away and unanimously as well? Was there no discussion? I'm curious to know what discussion or what kind of opposition there was to something like this, where the CMI says you can alter your birth certificate if you want. I mean, records of birth, it's not a matter of preference.
It may be that we're going to need to have better identification documents, like the something that has biometrics, and not so much rely on the visual presentation of whether you are masculine or feminine in presentation as being an identifier. Because whether you are sympathetic or not to a person's preference to present himself or herself as in some other, dress in all lime green. I don't know. Dive into paint their skin gold. When you present yourself, you're presenting yourself to other people who have a say,
right,
in whether you will proceed with whatever it is you're doing or trying to do. And so at some point we're going to have to face all this.
Do we have anything like that similar here on Guam? I don't think I've ever heard of being able to alter your birth records to reflect something that is expressly divergent from the facts.
And I agree with you that the birth record is a record, and it is that moment in time. However, as people continue to flower into other, presentations of personal expression, at some point, our technology and our ability to live with each other is going to have to evolve as well, so that it's not necessary to fly a pride flag to get the respect that you require at by somebody who is doing his or her job.
Yeah, it's interesting that we require licenses, we require documentation for certain certain qualifications, or for people to be able to work in areas. I mean, if we can arbitrarily change a fact like a birth certificate, what stops people from claiming that they can alter any documentation? On a similar note, that's not attached to identity, is some people's birth certificates are altered. Like if there's a birth certificate, there's no father involved, or his father has not been known, but a court determines that
assigns paternity.
Assigns paternity.
Yes, I think also some birth certificates are sealed by a court if a person has been adopted, and so there are ways to have your birth certificate reissued, basically, by going to court. But this is doing it legislatively. And we're about time to go to a break.
Yeah, let's go to a break right
and
now.
Then we have a caller coming.
You're
up.
listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. Don't go away. More after this.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK.
And that was what we were supposed to have heard earlier. Well, it's still showing. Let's go to this.
Hafa Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nakak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Suman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
All right, and we are back here on Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. It is 4:53. We have a few minutes before the top of the hour, and we have Phil on the line. Paul. Is this Phil or Paul? Oh, Phil on Thursday, not Paul. Buenas, welcome to Tall Tales. You have the floor, Phil.
Buenas, Jose.
How you doing?
Yeah, prayers for Bob and his recovery. Hope
Absolutely. He is doing well. I think he's just loving the respite he's having and sitting back, and I know he's listening to the show. So he's
all right.
He's grateful for your
good.
thoughts.
So, see, Mr. Zerzan talking about cannabis, and I just want to say, what about the alcohol? Because back then, the DUI fatalities and cirrhosis of the liver made it to the top 10 killers of the United States. If he wants to be proactive against cannabis, how about proactive against alcohol and cigarette that they killed millions of people?
True, very true. That is a comparison that a lot of people make, and I think
turns a blind eye on that.
Yeah, I think what helps perpetuate us reading anything that Paul Zerzan writes, because everyone has an opinion on this, and what is interesting is how much Paul Zerzan, Mr. Zerzan, is able to stir the pot. No pun intended. Whenever he writes or opines on something, and quite frankly, this one was pretty long. He usually words his letters very briefly, very little, no verbosity at all, and gets to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Red rice is orange. What was the other one that was very small? Abortion kills a small child.
But did you see the original one? The
Yes.
original letter of those two?
No, I did not.
Okay, because maybe PDN chopped off 80% of it.
Well, he usually clears the record and sends it. But yeah, you're right. There is something to be said about all the other things that we do put into our body. But I myself just find it interesting that that he can rile up the masses, and it makes for a great conversation.
No,
Absolutely.
it's all good. It's just that he should be fair and attack the cigarette that kills millions of people, alcohol, cirrhosis of the liver.
Mm-hmm.
I know several family members and friends that died from both smoking and cirrhosis of the liver. Alcohol.
Oh yeah.
So,
It's a huge problem here on this island, and
definitely.
And he's just pointed out one other factor that could be a factor in what's going on the island. One question we can ask ourselves is why do we feel the need to alter our realities, whether you agree with it or not? It's a philosophical conversation, and sometimes it's a conversation people have while they're smoking. While they're drinking, right? Sometimes our best ideas are while we're altering our minds.
The only thing I disagree with is the dispensary, because that's when you get into the strains and the high THC, and that's, I think, when it gets into not the basic marijuana. To me, if you or Mr. Woodstick are growing and I want to go to the flea market, I want to buy your marijuana and compare it to Mr. Woodstick and whichever one I like. That's the way I want to. It's an herb, you know.
You know, Phil, I have a question, and hopefully you know the answer to this. What is it that they have classified marijuana as in the United States that doesn't allow it to be experimented on?
I'm not sure in that part. I didn't get into the details of that.
Right.
I'm the old school back in the 60s. You get the seed, you grow it, and...
Right. Well, the reason why I'm asking, because I think it would be interesting. I know that a lot of people have compare marijuana use to alcoholism and claim there's no deaths or no illness or anything like that. But I think citable studies would be very helpful in putting out these opinions where you can cite some facts, and I'd be very interested to see those studies, but I don't think there are any studies like that in the States because it's been classified.
Not on marijuana, but plenty on cigarettes and alcohol.
Oh, absolutely, right?
He's not getting on that. That's why I'm quoting that it made the top 10 list of the in the 90s.
Yeah, that is interesting, and there is also a big opinion about the not just the politics, but the economics of marijuana growth in the United States that includes production of hemp and hemp products. You know, it's kind of akin to the corn oil versus coconut oil debate, or the pork industry versus the beef industry. How much of the money interests affected which industry grew bigger and more prolific in the States?
Yeah,
right?
we were blind when they told us that the coconut oil was not good for us, so we turned to the vegetable and corn oil and all that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. There's this corporate industry that under the table, these bureaucrats and.
Thank you, Phil, for calling. We're getting to the top of the hour. We're going to be going to the big halftime show, but I you know what? I encourage you to write that letter talking about alcohol and cigarettes on the island. You know, cancer is a big thing that affects our island, whether it's directly from cigarettes or other things that we might be impurities we're putting in our body. You know, marijuana is not the only item on the island. But thank you, Phil, and for those of you listening, don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
News by U.S.-led coalition forces in Syria.
A raid by U.S. troops in Syria Thursday resulting in the detention of a senior ISIS member. Officials with Operation Inherent Resolve say the captured leader was a bomb maker and no civilians were harmed, nor was there any damage to any coalition aircraft or assets. The bomb maker has not been identified at this time. Earlier this year, an ISIS leader in northwest Syria killed himself with a suicide vest during a U.S. Special Operations counterterrorism mission. Before that, another former ISIS leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, killed himself in Syria in 2019 when U.S. forces entered a compound where he was located.
Fox's Sean Lanchel. President Biden planning a trip to the Middle East next month with stops in Israel, the West Bank, and Saudi Arabia, where he may ask the kingdom to boost its oil output to help bring down gas prices. The president has written the CEOs of several big oil companies threatening to use emergency powers to increase refinery output.
They should be putting those record profits into expanding refining capacity from back to pre-pandemic levels. President Biden is putting a spotlight on this and calling on oil refiners to invest those record profits to increase capacity so cost at the pump could come down.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, the American Petroleum Institute, offering the president a 10-point plan to lower gas prices. Among them, a lifting of federal regulations, including the president's executive order that paused new oil and gas drilling. A new Fox News poll finds 47% of the people asked said they're falling behind financially because of inflation. President Biden met with House Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Schumer Wednesday evening to talk about ways to slow it down, hours after the Federal Reserve Board hiked interest rates 0.75 of a percentage point. America is listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The State Department trying to locate 2 American veterans who joined the fighting in Ukraine and are now missing and feared captured. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and Romania have arrived in Kiev this morning in a apparent show of support for Ukraine. Nearly 3 million Ford vehicles are being recalled because they could potentially roll away.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says it has 4 injury reports and 6 property damage reports, potentially related to Ford vehicles that are put into park but are apparently not in park due to a transmission issue, and they roll away. NHTSA also says something that attaches the shifter cable to the transmission can degrade or detach, so Ford dealers will replace that part and add a protective cap. The impacted models were all made after 2013 and include certain Ford Escapes, Fusions, Edges, Transit Connects, and C-Max vehicles. Ford says they're sending letters to impacted owners starting at the end of June. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A large heat wave over the middle of the U.S. contracting a bit. Too late for about 2,000 head of cattle in Kansas. Ranchers say they were killed by the stress of the high heat and humidity and the lack of winds that helps to cool them. Cosmetics giant Revlon filing for bankruptcy protection from its creditors Wednesday night. The company's been struggling with supply chain issues and what experts say was a slow response to changes in the industry. In Idaho, a judge has dropped cannibalism charges against an accused killer.
James David Russell is still accused of first-degree murder, but a judge ruled there's not enough evidence to also try him with cannibalizing his alleged victim, David Flagett. Bonner County prosecutors had alleged Russell thought he could cure his brain by eating parts of his victim. Autopsy reports show Flagett died from blunt force trauma last year. His body was mutilated with parts of his thigh and genital region removed. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Check out the newest hydro and garden center to hit Guam, Crop King Hydro. We have a huge selection of plant nutrients, soils, hydroponic mediums, organic pest control pumps, plant support, tools, and so much more. Call 635-4769. 635-GROW. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6 at the Dededo Satina Mall, right across from Payless and Paradise Fitness. For whatever you grow, think Crop King Hydro. Crop King Hydro.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Half a day. Patsy Gogui from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
The rising cost of living is affecting all of us on Guam. Our administration has expanded a program. We want to pay for your child's daycare up to $675 a month per child. This means more money in your pocket to pay for other expenses like the cost of gas and groceries. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration is investing in Guam's future, and that starts by supporting our working families. We are all in this together, Guam.
This ad is paid for by government funds of the Office of the Governor and the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Welcome back to Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. You're listening to KUSG 93.3 FM. We are broadcasting from Guam, USA. For those of you, our international radio listening audience, I don't know where you're listening from, but if you are on Facebook, please chime in. Let us know. If you're not on Guam, you could also let us know in the comments on YouTube. We fixed the link. That was my bad. Yesterday, I had placed the show on private, so it wasn't listed, even though the show was on there. So if you want to watch the show again, Tall Tales again from yesterday afternoon, it is on YouTube. You don't have to log into Facebook. And true to form, Paul Zerzan has stirred up the hornet's nest. I'm looking at the comments here on Facebook, and
that's his intention.
It's exactly his intention. It's good. It's good because it gets people talking, and it gets people having some sort of camaraderie about the subject matter. Jose Topago Jr. says Paul should write a letter about alcohol. I say great, but it won't get as much impact. Everybody will say, "Yeah, we know." We know how bad it is. Let's see. Colin says so easy to grow here, but I think he was talking about fruits and vegetables. But yeah, marijuana is easy to grow here.
I think Phil was talking about when he was saying he's old school, just throw a seed in the ground and grow it. But it seems that the movement to legalize marijuana was really pushed, justified by medical marijuana for PTSD, and then it was shoved over the finish line by industrial investors, and those who wanted to have government regulations so that...
Go, Daryl, with the conspiracy theory.
No, this is how the whole thing rolled out.
Okay.
Because there had to be a lab that was going to study and then only who was going to pay for the lab. Well, it had to be fees assessed on the producers, and you had to have secure zones. So this wasn't something you could grow out in the open. It had to be grown under controls, and those controls had to be basically like DOC type, fencing and.
So that's where it went from medical marijuana to recreational use.
At the time, I said all they needed to do was say, the Attorney General will no longer prosecute for this, that, and the other, like basically listed crimes. And just leave it on the books, but just declare we will not prosecute.
But I'm interested to see where he goes next, where Paul Zerzan goes next, because
to me
it makes for great radio.
Yeah, but his opinion is one opinion. But just think about all the people out there with opinions about this who never get on the radio.
He makes an
impact. They don't call in.
Which is, I'm not saying his opinion makes an impact. The fact that he makes an opinion makes an impact. I mean, if I wrote that letter, it might get passed over, but I bet you when PDN sees it's from Paul Zerzan, they want to publish it right away.
In the last break, we heard from a company that is providing the tools and chemicals and whatnot you need to grow things, and we see the PDN has an editorial. There's a whole Department of Agriculture asking for $110,000 more, to their $4 million budget, and they're 85% federally funded. And we have the University of Guam promoting agriculture, and we have fellows like Mr. Wistig out there, growing some great corn, and there's other people who have truck gardens, and they bring their stuff in, and we can buy it, we can enjoy it. We have backyard farmers, and all you need to do is throw a seed in the ground. We didn't need to have an industry. We just needed to say, we're not prosecuting for this.
Yeah.
We didn't need, and just the other day, and this is something that just escaped everyone's notice. The Guam marijuana regulations went into effect by default because they had
talked
not
about that. Bob talked
passed
about
it.
that here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, but by default, they didn't even adopt them.
Well, that's because the bill passed already, and I don't think any senators wanted to. And, you know, I'm going to say those that were interested and wanted to push this probably pushed it because their or they ran on the ticket, a platform of pushing it. And after that, they didn't need to do anything. And they really didn't need to do anything.
No, all they had to do was say, we're not going to prosecute. They
Yeah.
didn't need to even pass a law.
Yeah.
But the law that passed said they got to have a lab
Regulations,
and then
a lab,
regulations. But then in the end, they didn't even.
Right. But getting back to Paul Zerzan, because that's the one I want to focus on. And half the time I don't agree with him. Maybe even a majority of the time I don't agree with him. But I do agree with him writing more letters, because we are getting listeners all the way from Mandalore.
From where?
Well, at least this guy thinks he's from Mandalore. Mandalore. It's a fictional planet where the Mandalorians come from. It's never mind, Daryl.
Is that the island that's out off Agate, off the coast of Agate?
That's Madagascar.
No, Agate.
Yes. But this same Mandalorian said, put Zerzan in a room of absolute nothing, and he will make a number of rants about how he has a problem with the amount of matter and molecules that make up the existence of a room full of absolutely nothing. I lost my train of thought. Carry on. And he's back on Mandalore. So it's just interesting. But I'm trying to connect it. I'm not sure if I can. My mind works in tangents, so in my head I know it's connected. But I have this next thing here on the card called Washington Commanders versus Curiosity. And at first you might think it's about people's opinions versus authorities.
Or the Washington Redskins.
Yes, formerly known as the Redskins. The Commanders.
That's my team. I don't know about the Commanders.
Yeah. The immature part of my mind is giggling because I'm going, the Commanders. Do they go commando? But anyways, this one at first you're going to think it's about, the context is about one thing, but I'm going to try to frame it as something else connected to another article that I have here. And this one Bob sent today called Slagger versus the Media Cartel. And this has to do with how the media is formed and how we receive news and what news we receive and how it's put out there. So I don't know if a lot of you guys are aware that there was a defensive coach named Jack Del Rio who put out a tweet asking about January 6 hearings, and he connected it, or he compared it to the BLM riots and protests of the summer of 2021. My pandemic years are in a haze, but only because, never mind.
Not purple haze.
Not a purple haze or any kind of sticky haze. With the January 6th, I'm just going to read bits and pieces of this article here. This comes from Outkick. Outkick is a website, a sports/political website, mostly sports. And I believe it is founded by, I can't remember his last name, Clay. I'll get back to it later. I'll have to look it up. But the defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio of the Washington Commanders, had put out a tweet that's referring back to the January 6th committee hearings taking place, and wrote, would love to understand, quote, the whole story about why the summer of riots, looting, burning, and the destruction of personal property is never discussed, but this is. And when he was asked by reporters if he'd be open to discussing the tweet further with his players, Del Rio responded, let's have a discussion. We're Americans. Just talk it through. I'm for us having a great opportunity to have a fulfilling life. Like I said, every which way I can, and when I'm here, it's about love and respect. I love my guys. I respect my guys. But I also love the fact that I'm an American, and that means I'm free to express myself, and I'm not afraid to do that. And this is prompted by reporters after he made the tweet.
Right.
Shortly after making the comments after practice, Del Rio released a statement on Twitter apologizing for referring to the storming of the U.S. Capitol as a dust-up. But the Commanders' head coach, Ron Rivera, opted not to get into anything not pertaining to football. Oh, wait. Something messed up on my copy here. So anyways, after he made that comment, the coach was fined $100,000 for it. And he was fined by the Washington Commanders. Who was it that I'm going to read this article here that came out about 4 days ago. Jack Del Rio fined $100,000 for comments on January 6 and Floyd riots. Commanders issue a ridiculous statement. An embarrassing moment for the NFL, the Washington Commanders announced today that they are fining defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio $100,000 for comparing the events of January 6 to violence that erupted after the death of George Floyd in May 2020. The announcement was immediately applauded by NFL reporters, desperate to be the first to publicly proclaim their allegiance to the correct set of opinions. Rappaport displays a key function of modern activism disguised as reporting. Instead of expressing skepticism or scrutiny, sports writers approach each topic with the underlying assumption their opinions inarguably constitute the only acceptable set of beliefs. Del Rio's comments are troublesome and wrong, and therefore he deserves this, quote, significant response. Rappaport and others like him could have approached the issue with nuance and objectivity, but this is simply the latest example of media personalities committed to maintaining unblemished allegiance to whatever the current thing demands. So what did Del Rio actually say to justify such an extreme punishment? And this is the quote: "People's livelihoods are being destroyed. Businesses are being burned down. No problem. And then we have a dust-up at the Capitol, nothing burned down, and we're going to make that a major deal? Just think it's kind of two standards." Ironically, the statement released by the Commanders and head coach Ron Rivera essentially proves Del Rio's point. Rivera and the Commanders say, quote, they will not tolerate any equivalency between those who demanded justice in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the actions of those on January 6 who sought to topple our government. They completely ignored the violence, destruction, and lives lost during the rioting of summer 2020, instead implying that Del Rio compared January 6 with, quote, peaceful protests. Except he did the opposite. He specifically referred to the businesses and livelihoods that were destroyed, not those peacefully marching and carrying signs. And he's right. It was estimated that the rioting in 2020 would cost up to $2 billion, the most expensive damage in insurance history. You can make the case that calling the events of January 6 a dust-up may not have been the best choice of words without misrepresenting reality in the context of its comparison. People did lose lives during the riots in 2020, with one report placing their number at 25 or more. Rivera and the team glossed over that in their attempt to placate reporters like Rappaport. Not to mention the absurdity of a football team being the arbiters of what equivalences should or should not be tolerated. Bowing to the opinions of sports writers aside, the actual likely motivation for this fine was Del Rio's crime of wrong think. He said something that upset the NAACP, and modern corporations like the Commanders live in perpetual fear of offending progressive activist institutions. And of course, none of the parties involved seem to care that the violence and destruction that occurred in 2020 disproportionately affected Black and minority-owned businesses in major cities. The relevance or accuracy of his equivalence is ultimately irrelevant. The Commanders simply do not want to offend left-wing organizations or media members, and by publicly slapping Del Rio with a significant punishment, they hope it'll be enough to placate the mob. But appeasement never works. The facts and accuracy still matter. The team and Rivera accomplished nothing today other than making it clear that they're fine with misrepresentations and false equivalencies as long as it comes from them. That was 4 or 5 days ago.
That is an interesting angle, because the whole time you were reading this, I couldn't shake the comparison to Colin Kaepernick. The problem is that you had a guy who has a high-profile job in a sports organization, which is a commercial brand. And that brand stands, first off, has really strong contractual agreements with all the people that they sign on, whether they're coaches or players. And when they do something that is going to tarnish the brand, the ability of the company to make money, they can find.
Yeah, hold that thought.
They can find them.
Because the story's not over.
Oh, I thought you were
It
done.
weaves something else, and I understand where you're trying to get with Colin Kaepernick, but there's a nuance that actually makes that chasm wider. About a day ago, another article came out because the Washington Commanders kind of changed their story a little bit. The reason Jack Del Rio was fined by the Washington Commanders has now changed. Washington Commanders coach Ron Rivera now says he fined defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio last week because him calling January 6th breach of the United States Capitol a dust-up and asking about violent protests during the summer 2020 was a distraction. It's not because of what he said, it's just because it's a distraction. Just so everyone understands, I've spoken to Jack multiple times on what had happened and what was said. Rivera said Tuesday in an opening statement. I told him of the start of the team's 3-day minicamp. I told him the decision was I was going to fine him $100,000 and we were going to move forward with this. We had a great conversation. We talked again this morning. And the big understanding, just so everyone understands, this is not about the fact that he exercised his right to free speech. This is about him impacting the football team. That's the thing we all have to understand. I believe in the First Amendment very strongly. So in Jack's case, same thing. But the thing we all have to understand with these rights, these freedoms, comes a tremendous responsibility that we have to understand that as well. I'm sorry.
He's under contract.
But that's not what he said earlier, why he fined him. Because he couldn't believe that he was making equivalency between two things.
It does, and that's right. The opinions are out there, and everyone has one. The problem is,
especially the head coach.
But as Jack Del Rio used his position in the public eye, as he tweeted, he's tweeting to people who see him.
Have you ever gone on Twitter before? Have you ever seen Twitter before? It's a feed. If you're not subscribed to certain people's accounts, you're not going to see it. Sometimes you'll see it because there's so many comments on it. They call it ratioing something so that it shows up on a feed. But if nobody sees it, it goes on unnoticed, right? But it was because of one reporter who blew up the story, it became a huge thing. But that was one of the things that was pointed out in the last commentary. Outkick goes on to say that in announcing his fine last week, Rivera said in a statement that Del Rio was fined because his comments do not reflect the organization's views and are extremely hurtful to our community. And that statement was very clear, and the coach and the Commanders reject that idea of January 6th breach was a dust-up, but rather an act of domestic terrorism. But that statement also said lives were lost, and indeed one person was killed. Protester Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was shot and killed by a police officer. A handful of Capitol Police committed suicide in the weeks following the breach. But Rivera's original statement said that our organization will not tolerate any equivalency between those who demanded justice in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the actions of those on January 6th. But that's not what happened. Just a day later, where he says the reason he was fined is because it was a distraction. I don't see how this is what makes it laughable, is because they decided to express their opinion on the matter also, and then continue to fine Del Rio.
Right. Yeah, and that's what makes it so
for
ludicrous.
his opinion, right?
Because they could have just said, like
The
like
second
the coach
statement.
said, "Oh, you know, I believe in the First Amendment. He has his right. He has a right to say what he has to say, but he's under contract to us. And when he does it as a public figure, I just can't have that."
Right.
And I wouldn't be able to take the money away from him if it wasn't already in black and white that I could. And I'm doing it. And he knows that.
You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. It is 5:30. We're going to go to Wrigley Field. I see you on the list here, our Keith, and we'll see you when we get back after this break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. It is the 7th inning stretch. We have 2 more innings to go before we say goodnight until tomorrow. We have up bat is R. Keith. You're in the circle, R. Keith.
Hello, gentlemen. Is anyone who has more than 2 functional brain cells actually buying their latest rationale behind finding the man? I mean, come on.
Nothing. There is none.
Let's face it. He, like so many others, are being punished for wrongthink.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sort of a scary situation as to where this country has gone in the past couple of years. It's bad enough when the government does it, you know, and now we've got the wokeness infesting private corporations, and it's very distressing. It's very distressing. And the flagrant hypocrisy of it all, you know, oh, well, you know, so-and-so might be offending or distracting. Oh, okay. So these repeated reminders of the situation coming out of the team itself, that's not a distraction.
Right.
And the as you indicated, the very stark contrast to how Colin Clan taking the knee and the resultant brouhaha, that's not a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, really, do they honestly believe people buy into this?
Well, I was a young kid in the 80s hearing about the Rainbow Coalition and Jesse Jackson and what he did, I think, with Pepsi and some other companies, if they didn't do things to promote his opinion of how racial diversity and how to make sure that there's no discrimination in your company went, he would threaten companies like, I think it was Pepsi, right? I can't remember what the company was. He would threaten them with boycotts, and he had a platform. He had a soapbox that a lot of people listened to at the time. So there was that strong arming of opinion in that sense. And I think these days companies don't want to have that, so they're going to do the wokeism. Look what happened with Disney. Look what happened to all these other companies. Twitter did it. Facebook does it regularly. You go on Facebook, if you see an opinion that doesn't follow along with the way the media wants it, you get a fact check, and you get a big sticker or posting on your post itself that people can't read your own post until they get rid of or diminish that window that tells them that this post is factually incorrect. And even though that the post has nothing to do with the fact check itself, there's just keywords that trigger it. But it's just amazing how you can go from one point where the head coach says that he disagrees with what Del Rio said, and he states his own opinion, and then the next day it's really not about opinions. It's the fact that he just stated an opinion. What if he stated the same opinion that the head coach had stated? Would he have been fined $100,000? Probably not.
No, you and I appear to be the same age. I was growing up in the 80s as well, and recall the Jesse Jackson area. It's funny. I never went through a liberal student phase. I was always been a conservative, and we used to nickname it the Monochrome Coalition.
Well, I don't think. Do they use the term Rainbow Coalition anymore? Is that still an organization? I don't hear too much about it.
I don't know. Thankfully I haven't heard actually a peep out of Jesse Jackson in years, and we're all thankful.
Not since he was literally caught with his pants down. That usually ends people's notoriety in the public square.
So the question was he wearing the appropriate rainbow colors?
Right. Or was he doing it at an elementary school? Because I think that's allowed.
Yeah. At least it was consenting adults in his case. I mean, this piece leads into what we witness here on Guam. The local media, there's really good talent out there. There's some really good writers and journalists, but there's also those that have a certain mindset, and sometimes they blur the line between activism and straight journalism and stating the facts. And that's kind of a problem for me, because we don't have a lot of outlets that give a divergent opinion, other than the letters to the editor, the usual suspects, whether it's this radio station, with Ray Gibson in the morning and Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. We really don't hear an alternative viewpoint on anything else except for what's fed to us in the media.
And I couldn't agree more. I have pretty much stopped checking the newspapers, because if I want to know what their opinion is, all I need to do is listen to whatever the governor says. It's the same thing.
Right. And there's something to be said, too, about strong arming. And I don't know the experiences that GovGuam workers have during election time, if they really do feel the need to put the sticker on their car or wear the T-shirt of the executive in charge. But sometimes you got to ask, what's the motivation for joining some of these dinners and buying the fundraising ticket?
Well, in my work, I do some work that has me interacting with a lot of small businesses around the island. And I happen to know for a fact that certain politicians, although I was not informed who, but I could pretty much take a guess, strong-arm sign companies to make political signs for free.
Oh. So I've heard. So you've heard.
So I've heard, yes. Out of the mouths of certain sign companies, and they haven't mentioned who they are, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out who. But yeah, it is, and it is sort of scary. If anyone is familiar with or wants to find out where we're headed and why this is taking place, I suggest they do a little read up on Mao's Cultural Revolution, because that is the process that's starting to take place.
Yeah. It's kind of an irony, because this is supposed to be where the progressive mindset is supposed to be, and the progressive mindset is somewhat supposed to be about individualism, but this individualism has turned into some sort of group think, group thought, group motivated type actions rather than the individual's actions. If you don't go along with the group, then you're ostracized. Not just ostracized or shunned, you're also are in fear of losing your job or losing your livelihood. And people might think that that's a silly notion, and that doesn't really happen. But I've heard some credible affairs.
There are a number of friends of mine and myself who cannot speak our mind politically at our jobs. Now, if we upheld the dogma, the current conventional wisdom or politically approved opinions, we'd be fine. They can do that all day long. But if you dissent, you're automatically slapped with the, racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe, bigot, anti-environment, you're a hater, insert epithet there. And you get a call to the HR office if you're not fired outright.
Yeah. But I mean, I can understand. Okay, this second reason that Washington Commanders stated why they fined their assistant coach is because he shouldn't have been doing that, right? He should have been talking like this, distracting the team. Again, it was a tweet. It wasn't a speech he gave, and the reason why he gave a further opinion on his tweet is because a reporter focused on it, and I think the reporter actually became the distraction. But what do you think can be done, Keith? What do you think we should do?
Unfortunately, I'm really betwixt and between at this point. The November elections have to go the correct way, and then the 2024 election has to go the correct way. If we continue on the path that we're headed, frankly, I don't see this as a viable nation in a couple of years.
That sounds gloom and doom, Keith. You're supposed to give us our daily snark so we can laugh.
I actually do predict violence in the next couple of years.
That is scary to think of, but we've been watching it, and maybe we're seeing a small portion of what really goes on. But I have something here on the card that I think is very interesting and could be hopefully something that doesn't reach the shores of this island. It's something that people are watching. I'm going to get to it, Keith, which means I'm going to hang up on you if that's okay.
Okay.
Good hearing from you. Yeah, because I think this is important, and please listen to me because I think this is something that you'll be very interested in. But thanks for calling, Keith.
Okay, will do.
Okay. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. My name is Jose Martinez, your host for today and tomorrow. It is 5:41, and I'm going to the next thing on the card here. I was going to read a second article here pertaining to journalism and activism. We do have a caller. Is this Drive-By Jack?
How you doing today, Jose?
Very good. How are you doing? Long time no hear.
I called in that other day when the incident happened.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah, you didn't go on the air though.
But kind of scary. I was talking to Daryl. I said I kept on calling, and I forgot the 671 number. It was just such a panicky moment, but I just remembered and I dialed in, and I'm glad to see that Bob's doing.
Yes, okay. He's doing very well.
Yeah. So I was hoping that Father's Day is coming up, and for us men, strokes are a silent killer, and so we need to pay attention to the signs and stuff like that. And it's very important that, I was hoping that maybe you might get Dr. Akimoto in tomorrow or just talk to him on the phone. And just to remind everybody out there that I know that everybody's stressing out, and but we got to be aware that that stroke is really it hits us, especially at this age. And I always carry aspirin with me, I always have aspirin and Tylenol. Well, us men, for Father's Day, a lot of us get the EDC, which is everyday carry. So, you either get that Leatherman or, you get that Mini Light or something, that you would use every day as a Father's Day's gift. And if there's one thing that you should get us men who are over 50s, just a little self-care kit.
You're over 50?
We're not striving for immortality here. We're just trying to make it from the ambulance to the politics in the emergency room. So whatever helps us through,
right.
Great. But I do remember, and I always kept it on me that aspirin is a great everyday carry that
it is a blood
not only
thinner.
men but women should have in their possession.
That is
But
true.
anyways, I just caught to wish everybody a happy Father's Day to those who it applies to, because Friday is going to be very busy and I won't be able to call in. And if Bob's listening, I wish him
He's listening.
well.
Very good, and he can hear you. So
Yeah, and health and wellness all the way through. But I'm glad that he's able to recover.
Absolutely.
And it's just a teachable moment. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. And like Dr. Mack said a while back, it hits a lot of us Islanders more than any other parts of society. I don't know, maybe because of our high cholesterol or something like that, but it's something to keep in mind, and especially for those who are over 50, just carry it. I don't know if they still, they do. They have the lightly coated ones, and
there's low dose out there also.
The one that I'm used to is the Bear
right.
and the Excedrin, which isn't coated. But, this is all doctor stuff, so don't take it from me. It's just my experience, and just listening on the radio and listening to people, the signs are there, and you just have to be aware of them. But anyways,
thank you, Jack, for the
holiday
PSA.
to everybody, good health to Bob, and I hope that you get Dr. Akimoto, just a holiday tip,
Sure thing.
for us
sure
fathers
thing.
out there.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Jack, and thanks
You
for
too.
calling. Right. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG, The Point. My name is Jose Martinez. Let's go to a break, and then we'll wrap up after that.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
And they are off. We are almost to the end of our program, but I want to read this last thing that's on the card. Jane and Jane versus unborn children. You know, we're talking. Keith was giving a description of a premonition that he has of where the country is headed towards. We're seeing, massive displays of violence, not just through these mass shootings. I know they're being reported the way they're being reported, but we're seeing a lot of protests going on, protests that are happening in front of justices' houses, protests that are happening on top of Capitol steps, whether it's the nation's capital or the state's capitals. We have the Lone Ranger protests, like Senator Jim Moylan with his one sign in front of his own legislative building. Thank God it hasn't gone beyond that as far as violence or anything like that goes. But what I want to read today, and I don't know if you guys are aware, all throughout the United States right now, there's been a number of attacks and acts of vandalism on medical centers or women's medical centers. Some people have has labeled them as pro-life centers because they do not provide abortions, although they do say that they're women's health centers, and they're being used as those names are being used as pejoratives now to kind of degrade or denigrate what these centers actually do. They do not do abortions, and so there's been a rash of attacks and vandal actions on these clinics. Some have been firebombed, and I'm going to read to you an article that came out in the Daily Wire, and I want to commend the White House for not sitting on this issue and actually talking and speaking up against this group called Jane's Revenge. On Wednesday afternoon, President Joe Biden's administration condemned a radical missive purportedly from the pro-abortion group Jane's Revenge, promising to continue violent attacks on pro-life clinics and organizations. Violence and destruction of property have no place in our country under any circumstances, and the president denounces this, White House Assistant Press Secretary Alexandra Lamana told the Daily Wire. We should all agree that actions like this are completely unacceptable regardless of our politics, she added. Posted by Abolition Media, which describes itself as an online news source for revolutionary movements, the communique claims to be from Jane's Revenge. More than 20 pregnancy resource centers and offices of pro-life groups have been attacked since the leak of a draft Supreme Court opinion indicating that the justices are likely to overturn Roe versus Wade. Jane's Revenge has claimed responsibility for a slew of these attacks. In the purported Jane's Revenge missive posted by Abolition Media, the abortion activists promise that they are not one group but many. You have seen, quote, "You have seen that we are real and that we are not merely pushing empty words," the missive said. The message claimed responsibility for attacks on pro-life organizations and groups in Madison, Wisconsin, Fort Collins, Colorado, Reisterstown, Massachusetts, Olympia, Washington, Des Moines, Iowa, Linwood, Washington, Washington, D.C., Asheville, North Carolina, Buffalo, New York, Hollywood, Florida, Vancouver, Washington, Frederick, Massachusetts, Denton, Texas, Gresham, Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and among others. Quote, "We work in countless locations invisibly," the message said. "You've read the communiques from various cells, you've seen the proliferating messages in graffiti and elsewhere, and you know that we are serious. We are unsurprised to see 30 days come and 30 days pass with no signs of consilience or even bare minimum self-reflection from you who impersonate healthcare providers in order to harm the vulnerable," the purported Jane's Revenge message said. History may not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes, and we've already seen such stanzas where medical autonomy is stripped away, humanity is increasingly criminalized, and merely surviving becomes largely untenable. The alleged Jane's revenge message warned pro-life advocates. Your 30 days expired yesterday. We offered an honorable way out. You could have walked away. Now the leash is off, and we'll make it as hard as possible for your campaign of oppression to continue. We have demonstrated in the past month how easy and fun it is to attack, the message said. We are versatile, we are mercurial, and we answer to no one but ourselves. We promise to take increasingly drastic measures against oppressive infrastructures. Rest assured that we will, and those measures may not come in the form of something so easily cleaned up as fire and graffiti. Any pro-life group that closes its doors and stops operating will not be a target of the wrath of Jane's revenge, the message said. But the group issued a message to those who continue to provide services to pregnant women in need. Quote, it's open season and we know where your operations are. The infrastructure of the enslavers will not survive, the message said. We will not stop, back down, slow down, or retreat. We do not want this, but it is upon us, and so we must deal with it proportionally. The alleged Jane's revenge message claimed that the group finds joy and courage through attacking pro-lifers. For the allies of ours who doubt the authenticity of the communiques and actions, there is a way you can get refutable proof that these actions are real, the message concluded. Go do one of your own. You already are one of us. Everyone with the urge to paint, to burn, to cut, to jam, now is the time. Go forth and manifest the things you wish to see. Stay safe and practice your cursive. This is incredible. One attack bearing the Jane's revenge signature took place in Washington, D.C. on June 3rd at Capitol Hill Crisis Pregnancy Center, where vandals dumped red paint on the door, egged the windows, and wrote, Jane says revenge on the window. I'm very sad that people don't understand what we do and how it helps so many, the clinic director, Janet Derrick, told the Daily Wire at the time. Asked if she felt unsafe, she responded, at this point, not terribly unsafe, but a certain amount of trepidation. The vandals attacked her clinic because of Roe versus Wade, she said, emphasizing that there are people who don't like the fact that people who choose life have a place to go. Other centers fared far worse than the Capitol Hill Crisis Pregnancy Center. Multiple pregnancy centers have been firebombed, such as the Gresham Pregnancy Resource Center in Portland, Oregon, and the Oregon Right to Life. Abolition media did not respond to requests for comment from the Daily Wire, but Jane's Revenge has chosen similar venues for sending out communiques in the past. On June 9th, the DSM Street Medics published a message from Jane's Revenge on Twitter, taking credit for the vandalization of Agape Pregnancy Resource Center in Des Moines in early June. DSM Street Medics said at the time that it was not affiliated with Jane's Revenge. On Friday, the FBI warned that while it will protect the First Amendment rights of Americans protesting at the Supreme Court, it will not tolerate violence, destruction, interference with government functions, or trespassing on government property. This warning comes after authorities arrested 26-year-old Nicholas John Roski of Simi Valley, California, near Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home last Wednesday. Roski allegedly said he wanted to kill the justice. A Department of Justice affidavit details how Roski allegedly traveled to Kavanaugh's home armed with weapons and burglary tools and with the intent to kill the justice and prevent him from ruling on Second Amendment and abortion cases. Roski found Kavanaugh's address online, the affidavit said. Pro-abortion advocates with a group called Ruth Sent Us had posted the address online, sparking heavy criticism from those who feared for the justice's safety. Ruth Sent Us, which did not respond to requests from comment, put out a statement last week saying that they do not support violence. Roski told all authorities that he was upset about the leak of recent Supreme Court draft decision regarding the right to abortion, as well as the recent school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, indicating that he believed the justice that he intended to kill would side with Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws. Roski stated that he began thinking about how to give his life a purpose and decided that he would kill the Supreme Court justice after finding the justice's Montgomery County address on the internet. The affidavit said that he further indicated that he had purchased the Glock pistol and other items for the purpose of breaking into the justice's residence and killing the justice as well as himself. And this is happening. This is happening here in the United States. It's been tolerated a little bit more so than I think it ought to have because of the freedom of speech and wokeness. People don't want to tell the pro-abortionists or the quote-unquote pro-choicers that, you know, this action that they're advocating for could come to a head. But I think the reason why I'm reading is so that we can be aware. There's a lot more to this group, Jane's Revenge, that was written up. I can't remember which. I think this came from the Catholic News Agency, and the reason why I use that is because the Catholic News Agency has been reported on a number of churches and other faith-based organizations that help women in need who are pregnant, who have been attacked and been vandalized and firebombed throughout the United States. And CNA does put a map of all those places up there. Yeah, it's Thursday. I think I put everybody in a doom and gloom mode before the end of the show.
Yep. Well, we need to be aware,
right,
that there are these kinds of issues going on with people who would use violence to achieve political ends. When actually the Supreme Court's own discussion was in that draft that was leaked, is that all we need to do is let the legislature decide what the law of the land will be, not let the courts decide.
Right.
And so, but it's almost time to go.
Right, and we shouldn't allow threats either from groups, especially fringe groups, from like called Jane's Revenge or Ruth Sent Us. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG. Have a good night, everybody. My name is Jose Martinez.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
High prices. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The latest Fox News poll finds 47% of those surveyed say they are falling behind financially because of rising prices. That's 4% higher than last quarter and up 20 points from a year ago. 90% of the respondents say gas prices are a problem for their families. President Biden now blaming the oil companies for high gas prices.
The president sent a letter to a handful of oil CEOs, and part of it says the lack of refining capacity and resulting unprecedented refinery profit margins are blunting the impact of the historic actions my administration has taken to address Vladimir Putin's price hike and are driving up costs for consumers. He's also demanding an accounting of exactly why refinery capacity was down after 2020, which does seem to ignore the very basic reality that demand was way down because of COVID.
Fox's Peter Ducey at the White House. For a second day in a row, there's a little relief at the pump. AAA reporting the average price for a gallon of gas has fallen a half cent from yesterday. It's now just under $5.01 a gallon. The Federal Reserve Board hiking interest rates 0.75 percentage point yesterday.
You have to go back to November of 1994 to find an interest rate hike this large, but you have to go back even longer than that, more than 40 years, to find a time when inflation was running this hot. The Fed Chairman Jerome Powell knows that a 0.75% hike in the key rate